Hi everyone, welcome to Youth Force Daily. My name is Oz. Today is Monday, the first day of AIDS 2020 virtual. Thank you for joining us. Before we kick off this week's show, let me introduce you to what exactly Youth Force is. Youth Force is a group of young people under the age of 30 from around the globe. We aim to be the driving force behind an inclusive and meaningful youth program at the AIDS 2020 virtual. This daily show will bring you the inside scoop of what happened yesterday and also what's happening later today. We will have interviews with youth organizations, young activists from different regions, clinicians, and politicians. Let's get started with my colleague, Cosima. Hi, Cosima. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Oz. This past week had some pretty amazing events online.
Yeah, I have to say I was sad when the conference went virtual, but the experience has been great.
It really has. 2020 is the dawn of a new decade, and it sort of gives us this moment to look back at the goals we've set and achieved over the past 10 years. While it's true we've made great strides, we've also fallen short in many of our global goals. The agenda for the Youth Pre-Conference has been developed in consultation with young people and other stakeholders from around the world, and represents today's best thinking and approach working with and for diverse groups of young people living with or affected by HIV. The sessions were developed to build capacity, skills, and empower adolescents and youth and adults. And of course, we talked about the response to COVID-19 for and by adolescents and youth living with HIV on the ground and how it impacts HIV, particularly access and retention to care. It's inspiring to see the innovative and out-of-box responses young people from around the world have implemented in the face of this new global challenge.
Thanks, Cosima, for the recap. As a reminder, all of the youth pre-conference sessions Cosima mentioned are available online. And this year, we can't attend the conference in person, but now joining me is one of my favorite persons to run into at the conferences. Hi, Mercy.
Hey, Oz, how you doing? I really missed you this year. It's so sad that we can't all be together as usual. I'm joined by a fellow friend and activist, Eli, to talk about what our first time was like when we went to the AIDS 2018 conference in Amsterdam. So, hello, Eli. So good to have you on. So can you tell us a bit about what you were expecting about the AIDS 2018 conference?
Hello. I think when I first went, before I went, I was really sort of anxious because I was like, everyone painted it out to be really, really big. And it really lived up to that expectation. But also I got really kind of nervous to sort of see other young people living with HIV, but also to see sort of worldwide.
Yeah, definitely. I know whenever I speak to someone about it and they're like, oh, I'm going for the first time, I'm like, just be ready because it's such a big experience and there's so much to take in and to experience, and yeah, it's just so much, especially if perhaps you've not been to a conference like that before. So what was your favorite part?
I think I really liked the Global Village, that was sort of eye-opening in a sense because there was just so much going on. So that was probably a really nice bit. Other things were just listening to people talk about things that really mattered to me. So being able to see other people who are like me, especially in the Global Village, because the Global Village really had just a lot going on and it was very inclusive and nice to see everything just sort of happening there.
What advice would you give to someone who's going to their first AIDS conference?
To go with a very open mind, because there's just so much to take in. And you sort of I remember when I went, I sort of in my brain was like, oh, it's going to be like this. And it wasn't. It was just so much more and there's so much going on. So really have an open mind to take it all in and to just enjoy every minute of it because it's worth it.
There are things at these conferences that people don't think about because obviously a lot of it is about the networking and the big kind of lectures and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I want to chat to you about things like the Positive Lounge, there are, and, your experience as a trans man and being in that space and it is somewhere that everybody can go to. And I don't know if you could just speak to that of it's not your average, you'll go there and you'll feel like the one in the corner that nobody wants to speak to, but actually how involved the community is, even right down to the massages at the Positive Lounge. I don't know if you could speak to that.
The Positive Lounge was an experience. I felt like a VIP, you know. I felt all fancy walking in there. So it's all so like HIV positive people only, please. Fancy. I felt fancy, but also like it was just nice, you know, to see other people, and to see other trans people living with HIV, and to just sort of everyone be in that space at once, and no one feels like they're sort of the odd one out because no one in that space is the odd one out. That makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And is there anything else you'd like to say?
I think, like for me personally, it's being able to sort of see other people living with HIV. And for me as a trans man, to see other trans people living with HIV, which is something I don't often get to see, but also the knowledge and the confidence I personally got out of that conference was just it was a lot, and it was eye-opening, and it was amazing. And I think it was being able to gain knowledge from different seminars and speeches that just sort of gave me the tools to be able to go out and be a better activist, really.
Definitely. And I think as well, like, I remember when I went to my first one, I was just kind of awestruck by the amount of people that were there and the amount of people that cared about the same things we do. And it can feel so micro on like a local level of like, I'm just a girl who grew up in Cardiff who is living with HIV, but actually there's a whole massive community of people that care about things from anything and everything. So whether you care about the science or whether you really care about the experience of people, like there's so much in between as well that is covered. And I think that's why you should attend, because you get to be a part of the conversation in a way that you wouldn't get to be otherwise. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with me. Back to you, Oz.
Thanks, Mercy. It's amazing to see young people taking part in AIDS 2020 Virtual. And one of the topics that we focus on is youth approaches to harm reduction. And now joining me from one of my favorite cities, Berlin, is Ailish from YouthRise. Hi, Ailish.
Hey, Oz. Thanks for having me.
Can you give us a little introduction of yourself and your organization?
Yeah, of course. So like you said, I'm based in Berlin. My name's Eli Brennan. I work for YouthRise. I'm the executive director for YouthRise. So we're an international organization. We work remotely with no connection here in Berlin, actually. I'm originally from Ireland, and that's where I got more involved in YouthRise. We have quite strong links in Ireland. We have 2 members who are currently based there. I got involved in sort of drug policy reform and HIV advocacy when I went into university, and there was talk of a medically supervised injection facility being brought into Ireland. And that was kind of when I got politicized and decided, this is a really important thing that I should get more involved in. And that's how I joined YouthRise. And we have 20 members in 19 different countries. All of them are working within their region in harm reduction projects on the ground and doing amazing work.
Yeah, having 19 members from different countries is amazing. Can you give us a little bit of example of what YouthRise does? I know YouthRise is a global network of young people who uses drugs. You simply work on drug policies around the world, but maybe some examples would be nice for audience to hear.
Yeah, of course. So our members have a lot of autonomy in some of the smaller projects that they do, I guess. We distribute small grants to them, and then they can use that to build the capacity of different organizations within their region, of their own organization, of individuals in their region who they work with, and they can build the capacity of young key affected populations. Like we do work mostly with young people who use drugs, but obviously there's a lot of intersection there with different key affected populations. We're also involved in some more sort of overarching and international projects. So one thing we're doing at the moment is we're producing e-learning content, and that's going to be available, going to be quite open access to as many people as possible. We're trying to get it into as many languages as possible, interactive elements, like a social media element to it almost, where people taking these courses can interact with each other and can try to, learn from each other's experiences and share additional resources, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think an e-learning platform for harm reduction would be amazing, because as you know, I joined YouthRise last year and I was a member for a year, and I did learn a lot about youth harm reduction. because in Turkey, it's not a topic that is being discussed enough. So for our audiences who would also like to join YouthRise, can you tell us how they can join or support the work of YouthRise?
Yeah, so we have two ways that people can join. There's one which is like an individual sort of membership, which is the membership of our international working group, which is what you joined and what I originally joined. We normally accept members at the start of each year in sort of January or February. And yeah, this is just a membership based on an individual person. We also now have organizational members.
I also wanted to ask you, Ailish, as a youth-led organization, have you faced any challenges in particular because you were a youth-led organization? And also, what would support you to overcome those challenges easier?
Yeah, so there's a lot of challenges around really getting our foot in the door in different places. A lot of these challenges aren't necessarily specific to youth-led organizations, but they're certainly exacerbated by the fact that we are a youth-led organization. Issues around visas, especially being a network of young people who uses drugs predominantly, are really, it's a real problem when we're trying to get our membership to different events. To the CND in Vienna every year is always a struggle, trying to get people from the global south especially. We try to ensure that we have a really wide representation of voices of different young people who use drugs from around the world. And, the issues that I face here in Berlin are going to be completely different to the issues that someone in West Africa faces or in Latin America. So it's really important that we have an opportunity for these young people to have their voices heard on an international level, and not just heard, but also valued. When we do get our foot in the door, we're often the youngest people in the room. So it's important that when we do eventually get a chance to speak, that people listen and realize that these policies impact us very, very severely in relation to the wider society. So it's really important that we have more youth engagement at these events.
Yeah, I completely agree. Youth from different regions may be facing different challenges, but I think it is also important that we join networks like YouthRise so youth can support each other to best of their capacities. Thank you to Ailish for joining us today. And I also want to say that there is an amazing video of YouthRise, which everyone can watch in the Youth Cafe in the Global Village and get to know more about teams within the YouthRise and members of YouthRise. Thank you, Ailish.
Thanks, Oz.
Bye-bye. Joining me now from YPeer, a youth-led organization, is Lakey from Bhutan. Hi, Lakey. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello. Thank you for having me here.
Can you give us a little bit of introduction to yourself and also YPeer?
Well, my name is Lakey, and then as you introduced, I'm from Bhutan, and I'm looking after the national networks at YPeer. I'm serving as an international coordinator to YPeer International. So when we hear about the term or the organization YPeer, so it's an international network of young people and organizations, so be it activists, young activists, advocates, trainers, or government or NGOs. We look in the field of sexual and reproductive health rights, including HIV and AIDS, and gender equality, of course, gender-based violence, humanitarian, civic engagement, and we also look into like the global peace building. So these are core areas that we actually look into.
Can you tell us what else you do? Like, what are the examples of your work?
We are involved in ICPD process and SDG processes. So these are general ideas. But in the real world, suppose annually we have an activity called 10 Days of Activism, where people around the globe takes activity for continuously 10 days, and some even they do for 16 days. It's called 16 Days of Activism. We do activists for this many days. Also, basically, as I said, we are actually into advocacy and awareness programs, especially in the sexual reproductive health right and related issues.
Can you maybe also tell us how people can join and support YPeer?
People can join us through various paths from anywhere around the world, be it and at any time, right? Any young people can join us as a volunteer, suppose say, as a trainer, as a partner, or as a youth advocate.
Thank you, Lakey, for joining us today and giving us all these informations about YPeer.
Thank you so much for having me and YPeer here with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And also, if you want to see more resources from YPeer, you can go in the Youth Cafe in the Global Village and find resources produced by YPeer.
Thank you so much. We will be happy to go through.
We leave you today with one last conversation called Future of HIV Response. It's a segment we'll end every day with, and today we travel to Lebanon to talk to Bianca. Hi, Bianca.
Hi, how are you?
I want to ask you some questions to understand your local HIV response better. And my first question is, do you think your local HIV response is effective, and why?
I think we have reached some important milestones in our local HIV response. Testing and counseling are provided by the National AIDS Program at the Lebanese Ministry of Public Health. Both medication and other services are provided in a confidential environment. However, we still have a lot to improve. Most services are centralized in the capital Beirut or around it, which means that rural areas or even some smaller cities have decreased or no access to these services. Additionally, although, as we said, the rapid test is provided for free, other tests are still quite expensive. An example would be the viral load test, which is required annually by the ministry to continue dispensing ARTs, and that's currently unaffordable.
Yeah, I remember us talking about it in a meeting in Lebanon before. I also want to ask you about, I think HIV responses are more effective when people living with HIV have a say in it. Do you think people living with HIV do have a say in the local HIV response in Lebanon?
Well, in Lebanon, there are a number of people living with HIV who are involved with the local and even regional response. However, perhaps owing to the fact that people living with HIV are still very much discriminated against in our region, especially if they are part of one or more of the key populations, are refugees, or are of a lower economic status, the majority would avoid disclosing their status or being openly involved in the HIV response. So I would say at this stage, some of them are quite involved, but not as much as we want them to.
Yeah, that is very similar to the situation in Turkey. You mentioned key populations, and I also want to ask you if these services, especially HIV services, or we can also say sexual health services, are designed in a way to address key populations' needs?
So when it comes to the civil society, the community-based organizations, then yes, some of them do design their programs to be inclusive of these key populations. And when it comes to the government, it is true that after years of work and advocacy by the civil society groups and by experts, the National AIDS Program and other programs at the Ministry of Public Health try to be inclusive of these key populations, or some of them. However, in Lebanon and perhaps in the region, it is still considered a crime to engage in homosexual relationships, drug use, or sex work. And as long as this is still the case, the response cannot really respond to the needs of these populations.
Yeah, again, that is very similar to the situation in Turkey as well. I also want to ask you about the civil society. Do you think civil society is engaging with young people enough?
So far, there are no major initiatives to engage the youth in the HIV response in Lebanon. One has to take into consideration the safety of these youth that are living with HIV, especially if they are under 18 and or from the LGBTIQ community. However, smaller initiatives currently welcome the participation and input of youth over 18 in safe spaces such as an LGBTIQ community center.
My last question is, do you have any myths that you would like to debunk here?
I think there are a lot of myths that hopefully we could work on debunking, but if I should choose a few, I would say the first myth is HIV is a gay disease. The other would be HIV is a death sentence. And finally, PrEP is a magical solution and the ultimate answer for HIV prevention.
Yeah, I think all these link back to people living with HIV being involved in the HIV response. I think this conversation gave us a lot of detail of the HIV response in Lebanon. Thank you, Bianca, for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to join us tomorrow and keep the conversation going in the Youth Cafe at the Global Village. Have a nice day.